In this podcast, Christine Petersen will focus on how our bodies and our minds work and give you various tips and tricks, tools and techniques for understanding yourself, being happier in yourself, and living a better life. Every week, we will discuss different topics that might interest you and help you think differently to then change the way you approach life and yourself. In this episode, we will be discussing hormones and emotions and how you can influence your hormones in order to avoid stress, prevent burnout, and be happier. So, Julie, it's nice to see you on this podcast.
Nice to see you too, Christine. I'm really looking forward to this episode because we have a very interesting subject, hormones, a huge one. So I know you're a big fan of this topic. Can you tell us why?
Well, Julie, many years ago, I myself had a burnout, and it came as a bit of a surprise. I think it does for many people when they get into a burnout situation. So being interested in trying to understand what's going on in the body, why did I have this? What was happening? I started studying burnout, and I started going down into the details of understanding what happens in the body when you have a burnout, because I felt that if I could understand what takes place in the body, then I could maybe stop the burnout or help myself and stop the burnout happening.
Mm-hmm. And any big discovery that you've made or something, because it's a huge subject. So can you tell us?
Yeah. Well, actually, what I found was really, really interesting. And this is what I want to share with you today. I mean, not just about burnout, also, how do we live better lives? How do we live more happy lives? Understanding more about our hormones. And in fact, what I found was that it was the hormones in my body that caused the burnout to happen. So, and the more I dug, the more I realized that our hormones in our bodies are concerned with a lot of our bodily functions, and not just burnout or energy or stress. In fact, they're concerned with managing a lot of how your body works, your metabolism, your growth, the development, and how you get your energy from the foods you eat. And in fact, the hormones are the building blocks, if you wish, or rather the chemical messengers in your body. They travel through your bloodstream and they deliver messages to your different tissues and your organs. Now, they work very slowly, they work over time, and they affect many, many different processes in the body. There's about 50 types of hormones in the body. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, we know the main ones, the ones that affect our moods, such as dopamine, which we're calling the reward hormone, or oxytocin, you might have heard of, which is the love hormone. That's the hormone that gets produced automatically if you're playing with a baby or playing with a dog, or if you're falling in love. Mm-hmm. The other one you might know is serotonin. This is a mood stabilizer. It helps stabilize your moods. And you've probably heard of endorphins as well. These are actual painkillers. These are natural painkillers in the body. So all these are the good hormones, we would call them, the helpful hormones. These hormones help us react and change emotions depending on what's happening in our lives. We can't very easily decide which hormone is going to be produced. That happens automatically in your body, depending on some form of stimulation. What we can do is we may be able to manage the amount of and duration that a certain hormone is in the body. So for example, if we're talking about adrenaline, another hormone we all know about, adrenaline is a hormone which increases heart rate, it elevates your blood pressure, and it boosts your energy supplies. Now, adrenaline is used in the body in order to, when you're in a stressful situation, when you're in what we call the fight or flight mode, so you feel you're under attack, or rather your brain, your body feels it's under attack. Again, it's not conscious. Then the body will produce adrenaline so that you can either fight whoever is in front of you, or you can flee away from whoever there is. Now this, of course, was very useful when we were out on the savannah and we were hunting big animals, and we had to run away from tigers and whatever, rhinoceroses. It's not as useful when we're in an office sitting at a desk and somebody annoys us. And of course, adrenaline will still happen in the body. So one of the really interesting things is to find out what are the hormones that are being affected in a certain situation. So becoming aware of that, and then knowing how to maybe modulate the hormone, maybe allow the body to produce less adrenaline. Or another hormone that we may know about is called cortisol. It's another hormone that's released under stressful circumstances. And what does it actually do in the body? It increases the sugars in your bloodstream. It changes your immune system responses. It suppresses the digestive system and the reproductive system, and it increases your heart rate and blood pressure. Now, all these actions are done so that you can become a fighting or running machine. So it works very much with your adrenaline, again, when you're in a stressful situation.
Okay, you just mentioned being aware to regulate and learn to regulate them. So how can we be aware of them, and how to regulate them?
That's the big question. It is, how can we understand when a certain hormone is coming into our bloodstream? And I don't know if you've had the feeling, Julie, when you are in a panic situation or in a dangerous situation or in some sort of a stressful situation, you feel this tingling in your body.
Yeah.
And that's adrenaline and cortisol being released. It happens instantaneously.
As soon as I don't see chocolate in my kitchen,
probably,
then I have some stress. Yeah,
probably. So now that's actually, you're getting onto a good point, because we talked about endorphins before. Endorphins are painkillers, and endorphins will be produced by the body when you eat dark chocolate.
Oh, that's great news.
Yes. So if you're in pain or in some form of stress, you can have a piece of dark chocolate, and that will lower your stress levels because it'll be a painkiller, a natural painkiller for you. It's fantastic. Actually, talking about endorphins, another way to increase endorphins is by laughing. So, and maybe smelling essential oils, smelling lavender or citrus oils, and by exercise. So if you can find a way, I don't know, Julie, I know you love chocolate. So have a piece of chocolate while sitting on an exercise bike, laughing and smelling lavender, then you are, your endorphins will be heaven. Your endorphins will be top.
Okay, see. And if you go back to adrenaline, so you spoke about also learn how to regulate it.
Yes.
How are there special exercises or ways to do that?
Yes, there are. It's all about managing your response levels to perceived stress. Remember that stress is personal, it's individual. So something that will stress you might not stress me, or vice versa. It's all very individual, and it's all based on our experiences so far. So the body will remember something happened, and it will then, when it gets into what it thinks is a similar situation, it will have the same stress reaction. So one of the things you can do to lower your adrenaline levels is something like a meditation or breathing. Breathing is extremely useful for lowering your stress levels in general. So knowing that adrenaline and cortisol increase your heart rate and elevate your blood pressure, then if you can do things to decrease your heart rate and lower your blood pressure, such as breathing in a very slow, calm manner, and maybe calming yourself down by seeing things in a relative way, so being more pragmatic about what's happening, that can help lower your adrenaline and cortisol levels.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting about breathing, because I heard a podcast about a monk, and then they explained that they taught people how to breathe, because
Yes.
they said, in fact, people don't know how to breathe. So do you have any techniques that
Yes.
you use about this
Yes.
breathing thing?
Yes, absolutely. So if you want to breathe, I mean, and we can't go around 24 hours a day breathing consciously. It is an unconscious action in the body, and so it should be. What you can do is take just 3 minutes to sit down in a comfortable chair, or just sit anywhere. It depends on where you are. Of course, you can't always find a comfortable chair. And breathe what we call breathe the square. So this is very, very simple. If you see in your mind a square with 4 sides, a box with 4 sides, so you breathe in, which is one side of the box, and you count to 4. Then you hold your breath for 4. That's the second side. You breathe out and you count to 4. That's the third side. And then you hold again for 4. And that's the fourth side. You breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold. And there you breathe the box and you count to 4. And if you do that 4 times, I love 4s because it's so easy, then you will see that you will have calmed down your whole system. Now, of course, you have to be aware that this is happening and that you are going into stress, or you are having higher levels of adrenaline, and you'll probably realize that because your mind is going blank, you're starting to panic, you're starting to breathe quickly, and your heart rate is probably going up.
Mm-hmm. If we go back to, you mentioned burnout, so it's really important to regulate your adrenaline level. Are there any other hormones that
There is. In fact, we talked about cortisol, and both adrenaline and cortisol are very big risk factors in both stress and then burnout. Now, burnout is a different condition to stress. Burnout tends to become due to long-term stress, when you've had these chemicals, these hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, running around your body for a long time. Now, the human body is made to have these inputs of adrenaline and cortisol, these spouts of hormones when they're needed. And then the human body normally would then use the hormone, and then the hormone stops being produced. And that's how it would work on the savannah or wherever, where we needed the adrenaline, or we needed the cortisol to run away or to fight and to be really powerful and active. And then once the danger had passed, we would then relax back to our normal state. Now, the problem we're having today in life, in many of our lives, is that we are constantly in this state of what we call arousal, where the body is pumping adrenaline and cortisol into our systems constantly. So the only time we're not having this pumped in is when we're sleeping. And then the body is trying very, very hard to overcome and to relax in that sleeping time. Now, that's would be causing what we call chronic stress. And then it would later on be causing burnout, because after a while, the body can no longer cope with this high level of stress, this high level of adrenaline and cortisol in the body. So the body actually stops producing as much adrenaline and cortisol, because there's just no more there. The reservoir is empty. Okay. So the things we can do to avoid that is, the first thing we need to do is we need to look at where do stress hormones come from? Where are they built from. In fact, the basic building block of stress hormones and sex hormones, estrogen and testosterone, is cholesterol.
Oh, yeah.
And if we want to produce these hormones, if we're depleting them constantly, we need to produce more. So we need to eat natural sources of cholesterol. For example, natural egg yolks, grass-fed butter, or ghee, grass-fed meat, if we're meat eaters, and fatty fish like wild salmon and other fish that could help us produce this good cholesterol. Another thing we need to look at is controlling the sources of stress in our lives. So big stressors are caffeine, alcohol, sugar, and flour. So we should be looking at reducing alcohol or eliminating it, eating enough protein, and avoiding sugar and refined carbs, exercising regularly. What that will do is reduce our insulin levels and increase the insulin sensitivity. So our bodies become more able to use whatever sugar there is in the blood. We have to consume what we call healthy fats. These are coconut oil, dairy fats, not much, and mainly olive oil and nut oils seem to work pretty well. We want to avoid overeating. So avoid eating too much and also avoid eating too little, because that will change the hormone productions. If we're eating too much, we're increasing our insulin levels. If we're eating too little, we're increasing our stress hormone, the cortisol, because our body goes under stress because it's not getting the nourishment and the food it needs. So another thing is try and get consistent, high quality sleep. So go to sleep at the same time every evening and try and get as much rest, not too much either, as you can during the night. Stay away absolutely from sugary drinks such as Coke and other sweet beverages. Get as much fiber as you can in your diet. It stimulates, in fact, the production of the hormones that make you feel full and satisfied. That's the ghrelin hormone, which is produced in the stomach. And eat eggs. So I've already spoken about the egg yolk to increase your cholesterol. You can eat eggs because they actually beneficially affect your hormones, and they lower the levels of insulin, and they lower, really interesting, all protein will lower the hunger hormone, which is ghrelin. So the more protein you eat, the less hungry you'll feel.
And about sleep, because I think the lack of or insomnia is one of the first signs of burnout. So are there any other things that we can do to prevent it or to slow down?
What people tend to say is, the experts say that if you are having problems sleeping at night, then whatever you do is never sleep during the day. However tired you are, do not fall asleep. So keep the sleep for the night, and then create a ritual, a bedtime ritual. Make sure that you've got a quiet, dark room to stay in, to sleep in. Make sure that maybe you want to put some lavender drops on or near your pillow. Maybe you want to have a warm bath or a shower. Milk. Some people, those who can digest milk, some of them find that milk helps you feel a bit sleepy, and it produces serotonins. And you can also try and go to, or rather ready yourself for sleep early, around 10:30. And you may say, oh, well, that's far too early, I can't sleep. That's okay. You can lie in the dark and just relax. Just let your body relax. There are these sleeping techniques of emptying your mind. So it's a form of meditation. If you can find a way to meditate, stop thinking. So whenever you catch yourself having all these ideas and things running around your head, acknowledge that they're there, and then stop thinking about them and just think about, well, in meditation, as you know, there might be a word, or there might be an image you have, or a candle or a flame or something. You might not want to have a flame burning when you're trying to go to sleep. So maybe counting sheep would be a good idea. Something that's repetitive and stops your brain from racing.
Mm-hmm. And I know also that it's very important to have no screen time before going to bed.
Yes, absolutely. No screen time. So turn off all screens. If you do have any screen time, make sure that you've got this filter, the nighttime filter on it. And you can get these free filters on both apps on your phone and your PCs and whatever. What they do is they filter out the blue light, because the blue light is a message to the brain to say, we have to wake up, because during the day there's blue light, and the brain realizes that, and it will then stop producing melatonin, which again is another hormone. And in fact, if we have this ritual of going to bed, of not having blue light around, of having very peaceful, calm evening, if that's possible, of course, depending on your life situation, then that also sends signals to the body to produce melatonin, which is the sleepy hormone.
Okay. So, but it's true that when you're stressed, this is what's so interesting. You always want to be on your, laptop or on your phone, instead of having this really cool down moment or relaxing moment. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, and this is where you've got to become very, very controlled. You've got to have a lot of self-control, and you've got to change habits. And habits are there because they have been useful to us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a certain habit. However, sometimes habits then stop being useful. So we have to choose which habits can be useful to us and we want to keep them, and then which habits are not useful to us. And we want to then be aware of them. Again, self-awareness is the key, and then change our habits.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any evening ritual that you follow or that respect?
Yes, one of the things I like to do is to go to bed, have a yellow light, not a white light. So I make sure that my night light, my bedside lamp has a warm yellow light, and have a very calm. I try and have a very calm room. Have a cup of something hot, a hot cup of tisane. You have sleepy time teas or whatever tisane or herbal tea that you enjoy and that makes you feel calm. Actually, just very simply, you can take lavender flowers and put a teaspoon of lavender flowers in hot water and drink it. That's a very calming herbal tea. And then read a book, because you're not using your screen, you're not watching TV, you're reading a book. And by reading a book with this yellow light, that's going to help your brain focus on something that's not the day and not your normal life, and it allows you to start relaxing. It allows the brain to start unwinding.
Okay, I already feel more relaxed. So
good.
And you mentioned before insulin. So can you tell us a little bit more about this hormone?
Yeah, insulin is a really interesting one. It is it's an extremely critical hormone. If you don't produce insulin, then you die if you don't have insulin in your body, because insulin, in fact, is the hormone that takes sugar around the body. And the problem that we had, in fact, what it is it's a fat storing hormone. It's produced normally by your pancreas. Had he not been injected, it totally reversed his condition, not the first injection, but over a series of weeks. And that marked the discovery of insulin. And what's really interesting is that the childhood diabetes, before 1922, the life expectancy was a matter of months. So if a child got diabetes, he would die. They would die within months. And after the insulin was discovered, the mortality of patients, especially in the Canada and United States, this was, in fact, Banting was working in Toronto in the hospital for sick children, and he started injecting the sick children in the hospital with insulin, and he started having spectacular results. And in fact, it made a difference to millions of patients. So that's where hormones and insulin started becoming really, really important and really interesting. And in fact, of course, the news spread worldwide, and people started being cured worldwide. People were calling insulin the greatest thing of the age. And it was in the newspapers in Toronto. They would share the success stories of people being saved by insulin. I mean, imagine that now. Mm-hmm. So, in fact, Banting and McLeod, one of the guys who worked a lot with Banting in producing, in forwarding this, they got the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine in 1923. So they got it a couple of years after they started using insulin. They had the Nobel Prize, which is amazing. So I just love that story because it shows how being aware of insulin, being aware of your hormones can change your life. It can save your life.
Mm-hmm. I'm quite surprised that it's, in fact, it's quite new, you know, like it's just 100 years.
Yeah, so. It's 100 years old, 1921,
yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah. And we speak now a lot about hormones, and most of the time it's linked with female cycle, or, you know, female bodies. So is there any hormones that would interest, or I don't know how to say that, but more linked to the male bodies or male spirits?
Yes, absolutely. So as we know, the female body produces estrogen. Actually, all humans produce both female and male hormones. The female one is considered estrogen, mm-hmm. And the male one is considered testosterone. The other one, female hormone, is considered estrogen and testosterone. Sorry. Now it just depends. If you're female, then you will produce more estrogen and less testosterone, and vice versa if you are male. Estrogen and testosterone, of course, are extremely useful hormones. We can't live without them. Estrogen is considered it's released by the ovaries of the women, so you can only release estrogen if you have ovaries. And it develops breasts, pubic hair, and it widens the woman's hips. It's also involved in forming the bones, in blood clotting, and in the health of your skin and your nails. Now, interesting is if you don't have enough estrogen, you'll probably have low moods and maybe depression. And if you're in menopause and your estrogen levels start to fluctuate, so your body is starting to produce less estrogen, you may well experience hot flashes, low sexual libido, and you may well gain weight. Now, for the testosterone, is produced in the male testicles. It's also produced in the ovaries. It's most often associated with your sex drive. And it's also associated with the muscle and the bone mass and the distribution of fat cells. So if you've got a lot of testosterone, then you'll have more muscle and higher bone mass, which is what you'll see as a difference between men and women in general. Men will tend to have more muscle and bone mass. And it also influences where the fat cells are distributed. Now, if you have low levels of testosterone, you might have problems with erectile dysfunction, a low sex drive, loss of muscle, and a lower bone density. So again, these are hormones that you have to be a bit careful of. You want to try and keep them at a good level. Now, both of these, estrogen and testosterone, if you don't have enough, you may find you're getting depressed, you're getting irritated, you may be getting angry easily, you poor concentration, and you're sleeping badly. So some of these effects you can actually evaluate. Could this maybe be due to my estrogen or testosterone levels? And you can get them checked. You can go and have a blood test done.
Okay, so it's thanks to a blood sample that you can see.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Now, it's not always very precise because the amount of hormones of estrogen and testosterone, actually the amount of any hormone in your blood will vary according to what's happening. So you may need to get your blood tested over a series of days to find out what your real levels are.
Okay. So, and to finish this podcast, any trick or advice you have about how to handle our hormones and how to be balanced?
Yeah. So what we want to try and do is we want to try and increase what we call the helpful hormones, the good hormones.
Mhm.
So we want to increase dopamine. Dopamine is what we call the reward chemical, or the reward hormone, as I said at the beginning of this podcast. Now, to do that, you can do things like completing a task, checking off a task from your list, or self-care activities, having a bath, giving yourself a break, going for a nice walk, eating good food will give you a dopamine hit. And also celebrate little wins. Be happy about what you achieve. It doesn't have to be the big stuff, it can be the little stuff. Mm-hmm. You may want to increase your serotonin levels. The serotonin, as we said before, is the mood stabilizer. It balances your moods. And this, the things you can do there is you can meditate, or just sit and think, or read a book. Exercise is really, really useful. Get some sun. Sun doesn't just give you vitamin D, it also increases your serotonin levels, and it stabilizes your mood. And be in nature. Find a piece of grass, find a forest, find some nature that you can sit in or walk in. Exercise in, of course, is the best in the sun. Then you're doing
some dark chocolate.
And eat some dark chocolate. Then that'll help increase your serotonin. And of course, the dark chocolate is the endorphins that will be helped by that. Mm-hmm. Endorphins we've already spoken about. Find a ways to laugh, essential oils, eat dark chocolate, and of course, exercise again. So try and hit these positive chemicals, give them little hits, these hormones, to increase your good mood.
Mm-hmm. I love the fact that you mentioned the small, tasks, or like smaller wins, because I think we always look for the next big goal and we always forget to celebrate what we've achieved. So that's great.
It could be just, I got up this morning and I made a cup of coffee. Yes. And then you can have a piece of chocolate to celebrate.
Exactly. So Christine, what would be the last words to finish this episode?
I think the last word is awareness. Be aware of what you're doing. Be aware of yourself and your moods, and realize that you have the power. You can do little things to change your moods and to become happier in your everyday lives.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So now I'm going to go into nature, run, and eat some dark chocolates.
Yes.
Thank you very much for all this information.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. It was such a pleasure.
Wonderful. And talk to you soon then.
Absolutely, Julie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode. You've been listening to A Toolkit for a Better Life with Christine Petersen and Julie Charef. For more information and details on how to contact us, please see the podcast description.